first of all, it's my very first proof copy of Fairy Tale. So, look at that. Look at that, it's a real book. And everything. Shout out to my wonderful cover designer, Cassandra Freeman at Beyond the Inspiration. Ta-da! Barcode and everything. Okay. Dedication. Love you, Faith. She's the one that gave me the idea for this book, actually. As I've told about in the blog post, look at that table of contents. It's so pretty. And then you've got Chapter 1, A Hole in the Air. And that's what we're going to be reading today. Oh, one little sneak preview real quick for you guys is at the end of the book, I have this little bonus Nethreb dictionary. It's a language that's used like once or twice in my book, but back when I originally made it when I was 15, I made up this language for them. So, there's that. In case you don't know enough languages you're never gonna use. By the way, Sean supposedly wrote this book, so if you're taking insult by the fact that it says, in case you're a huge nerd who wants to learn another mythical language you'll never use, blame this dude, because I wouldn't say that, since I am a nerd, but he's not really, or at least he doesn't want to think he is. Alright. The time has come, my little friends, to talk of other things. Fairy Tale the novel. By Hope Pennington. Wonder who that girl is. Chapter 1. There's a Hole in the Air. Once upon a dorky Tuesday, I saw magic. I lay under a creaky swing set in a striped t-shirt and ratty jeans, poking at a swing with my finger. To tell you the truth, I was bored of playing Epic Wizard Death Spells Volume 5 on my new PlayStation, and couldn't think of anything better to do. The story would be more interesting if I started it with some exciting gunfight or a hero doing a big adventure thing with daring stunts, smooth moves, and witty quips like in the movies, but it didn't start that way. This story started on a dorky Tuesday when I was bored of fairy tale games. Everything needed to create the boringest day ever was there. The tired swing set in the back of a tiny neighborhood, the wimpy tree, the back deck made by a dad who really didn't know how to make back decks, the broken screen door, and even those pointless wind chimes with a rusty bird feeder. What are you doing? That would be Katie, my twice as sensible but supremely annoying 15-year-old sister. She loomed over me in her school uniform, arms crossed, waiting for my answer. I slid my hands behind my head before dignifying her question with a response. Sunlight glared in my eyes, making me squint, but I tried to keep my cool. I'm busy. I can see that, she mumbled. Busy planning your future, I suppose? You know playing wizard death spells isn't a real job, right? Unless you want to be a warrior elf. Maybe I do. Her tired smile didn't think so. Or maybe you could help me with my homework since you're doing nothing anyway. Always an ulterior motive. Hey, don't hate on the fairy tale, I pointed out, sitting up. It takes skill to beat 12 dragons in 2.5 hours with all health and no loss of gold. Oh, please, like it's hard, she snorted. You couldn't survive a real fairy tale if your life depended on it. Oh yeah? Yeah. Why don't you get up and learn some real life skills like helping mom with that stack of dishes or getting a summer job or helping your kind-hearted, adorable sister with her homework? What the heck? I stood quickly, faking astonishment. Mom never told me we had another sister. Rolling her eyes, she turned and sauntered back into the house. Fine, I don't need your help anyway. I could beat the heck out of any fairy tale, just so you know, I called after her. Ignoring me, she walked back inside, letting the screen door slam behind her. I just know them inside out and upside down is all. I kicked the leaves, scattering them across the bleached grass. I kicked at the leaves scattered across the bleached grass. Anything would be better than this backyard. I rubbed my stubbly goatee. I really should get in and study. But what was the point? Study to work to eat, to study to work to eat. There was another level of wizard death spells calling my name. Not that that would change much. I'd still have annoying homework forced on me at some point to stress and tangle my brain to no end. Life stunk sometimes. I picked at my fingernail, trying to push the annoying thoughts to the back of my head. I took out my aggression in a roundhouse kick to a nearby faded soccer ball. It flew a few feet and then vanished into thin air. What the? My mouth hung open as I stared where the ball had been a minute before. It had rolled between two trees and now was just gone. I walked forward slowly. I hesitated and glanced back at the house. This couldn't be some sort of prank, could it? Katie was nowhere in sight. Haltingly, I reached my hand between the two trees. It vanished. Gah! I yanked it back and it reappeared. Ah! I stared at my hand. I stared at the air between the trees. I mean, that's all it was, air. Well, that's all it looked like anyway. I glanced back at the house. Did anyone else see that? No. Okay. I slowly pressed my foot forward and it passed through the hole in the air, vanishing. Whoop! What the? I yanked it back out and stared at the trees. Suddenly it struck me. This couldn't be. But it obviously was. If it was, then the stupid thing would be to step into it. Just step into some magical fairy tale doorway that I might never, ever, ever get back out of. Yeah. I blinked at the portal thingy. What's the worst that could happen? I'm gonna do it. I stood staring at the air. I'm gonna do it. Nothing happened. I broke off a twig above the tree, on the tree above me, and tossed it between the two trees. It vanished and the air kind of rippled. I took a wadded up dollar bill from my pocket and threw it in. It vanished. Yeah, I'm gonna do it. I inched my foot forward and pushed it through the hole in the air. It vanished inch by inch. I was really about to enter another world. Me, Sean Williams, an adventurer. My leg was invisible in front of me. One more step and I'd be... Forget it, I'm not doing this. The gaming life's pretty exciting after all. I tried to pull it back when I felt something from the other side of the hole in the air grip my foot and yank it forward. My heart leapt into my throat. Hey! It just came out. It really sounded more like a desperate plea than an angry protest. As I hobbled back, my foot was wrenched forward and I lost my balance. Panic gripped me as my back hit the ground and my other leg was grabbed from beyond the portal. No! I jerked my leg with all my might and it escaped the grasp of something moving, reappearing on my side of the portal, and I knew the time had come to scream. Katie! Katie! I heard the thumping and bumping of someone rushing recklessly for the back door. Mentally slapping myself for always leaving things lying around where people could trip on them, I kicked at whatever held my leg. Let me go! I looked down and saw, to my horror, my pants now entirely swallowed by the portal. Rolling onto my stomach, I gripped the grass and frustratingly loose soil. I only caught a glimpse of Katie bursting through the screen door before my head was pulled into the portal. Thump. I fell on soft ground in the pitch black with 2 hands full of dirt and grass. Lying still, I breathed out, then in, then out, then in again. Not knowing what to think, and therefore not thinking at all, I lay still, not moving a muscle except to blink. After a minute, I felt the hand that had pulled me through still gripping my ankle. Gasping, I lunged forward and grabbed at it, only to feel a slimy wrist pulled away with an inhuman screech. Who's there? I jumped to my feet, but the yell died off, leaving only a hollow echo bouncing back to answer me. My heart thumped once hard. I held my hands out in front of me. I gulped. Fear crept up my spine. As my eyes adjusted, I noticed that dim light sifted through a patch of ceiling above me, barely illuminating a dirt floor beneath my shoes and dirt wall to my right. Stacks of wood barrels cowered in the corners. Hey, who's there? Silence. Maybe they were afraid of me. Cold tickled my arms and the back of my neck. I turned around to see anyone in the darkness. I'm an expert at kung fu, I lied. I'll tackle anyone who comes within a... What was a good number? 5-foot radius. A drip in the dead silence nearly made me jump out of my skin. My heart beat regular now, or was that faster than normal? I crept forward, tense. I will find you, I threatened. I figured threatening would scare it, plus it kind of helped me feel less wimpy. And when I do, I went on, it will not go well for you. Show yourself now, and I swear. And I placed my hand over my heart. I will not harm you. A squeak from the dark sent a cold chill up my spine. I turned toward where I thought the sound was, and a greenish hand stepped from the shadows. It looked like it was going to be gross. I gulped and held my breath to whatever stench the thing might carry with it. The creature that stepped out was less than 3 feet tall on all fours, with hands for feet and a round head as big as half its body. Its big dilated eyes blinked above its lipless mouth. Tied around its slick head was a scarf of rough red cloth. It had no other covering of any kind, and approached haltingly, looking frightened eyes up at me, wagging a long tail behind. I hesitated. It might be faking. What do you want with me? My voice trembled. The creature whimpered, shifting from one knobby forefoot to the other. Go on, speak up, I barked, confidence returning with the cower of my captor. It smiled at me, making pleased squeaks and gurgles, but didn't say a word. Feeling stupid, I lowered my hands. You can't talk, can you? Of course it didn't answer, but smiled back eagerly. I thumped a palm to my forehead. Lovely. I was kidnapped by a... Tried to remember if I'd ever seen anything else like it before. Whatever you are, an animal. It waved its tail back and forth slowly, still smiling. I leaned a hand on the dirt wall and put the other on my hips, staring at the totally gross yet strangely charming creature in front of me. Nothing changed as I glared at the guy hard. How could I have been kidnapped by that? It was humiliating. And yet I'm standing here talking to you like you can hear me. It smiled. I gave my head a good shake. Whatever. A creaking overhead made me jump back, and the freaky creature ran off into the dark. A crack of yellow light spread across the floor beneath my feet, drowning out the darkness. Squinting up, I saw a trap door opening and got a sour sinking in my stomach. I was going to be forced to explain being here. Well, wherever here was. Well, not if I ran and hid. I glanced at a stack of barrels, but saw the creature's tail sticking out behind them and decided to look for a less crowded hiding place. There was a ladder coming down from the trap door with a shadow behind it. I darted for it, slipped behind it, and barely pulled in my shoulders enough to make it when light from the door pooled the floor and someone clomped down the ladder into the room. The creature glanced at me from behind the barrels, then back at the figure, dropping first one boot then the other down the ladder. The man thumped the ground of what I now saw was a basement and turned around. I was surprised by what I saw. A shaggy brown mop hung around the man's face, and a full beard thrived on his chin. A stern expression looked like it had been branded into his face as his dark eyes studied the room. He wore a thick brown shirt under a leather vest. Several belts were strapped around his waist, holding all kinds of weapons. 2 swords hung at his left, and an axe was strapped on behind. Not to mention a couple more weapons I couldn't identify from my cramped hiding place, which I now realized was a pretty stupid hiding place after all. Sure, the light wasn't really shining on me, but I wasn't shrouded in shadow either. After glancing around the room, the man called back up the ladder. No one down here, Hanglin. I wondered who they were looking for. Me? The monster eyed me from across the room with a wistful stare. I wanted to tell it, no, sit, stay, but I couldn't move for fear of being noticed. After a last look around, the man planted his boot on the bottom rung of the ladder and lifted himself towards the opening. Not daring to breathe, I thought a sigh and grinned at my escape. The weird creature watching me grinned back in unashamed pleasure, then darted from the cover of the casks towards me. The man on the ladder swiveled in his perch, eyes widening at the creature that looked paler and more grotesque in the sunlight. Manishalo! Cried the man. He leapt to the ground and dashed towards by what, judging by the fire in his eyes, might have been a demon. The 4-legged monster whimpered and looked its enormous fear-filled eyes up into mine. I did my best not to move or think. The burly man was at the creature's side in 2 strides and yanked it up by both arms, standing uncomfortably near the ladder that only barely hid me. You beastly devil! Stern as ever, the man had a worried look behind his eyes. "What do you want with my basement?" The man scanned the animal with a mixture of awe, terror, and contempt. After a minute of uncomfortable silence, the man shook his head. "I suppose one can't know. But we don't want any ill fortune here. Be gone, and attach yourself to someone else. I have no use for you." As he was about to toss the gangly creature aside, he took a thoughtless step forward and riveted his eyes to the shadow I hid inside. I smiled meekly. "Hi." With the return of his rage, he released the animal and thrust his hand into the shadow, gripping my arm and wrenching me into the light. I tripped and instinctively grabbed the guy's vest with my free hand, but I shouldn't have worried about falling. His iron grip on my arm wouldn't have loosened if I'd been dragged away by 1,000 horses. The glove bit into my arm until I got to my feet. My mind scrambled as he dragged me towards the ladder, his eyes glaring into my soul. He flung me against the rungs and they banged against my chest. The smell of cedar wafted up my nose. "Get up there!" he growled. Clasping the flat rungs, I scrambled up the steps, digging a few splinters into my palms on the way. The rubber soles of my shoes found easy grip on the rustic ladder, and before I knew it, I had vaulted up into a house, with the burly man only 2 steps behind, dragging the pitiful-looking monster with him. "Cowering in the basement at a time like this!" the man grunted, unclasping one of his sword belts. The room I'd been thrown into seemed to be made of dust and hay, with crude wooden tables and shelves scattered randomly around. I had no more time to admire the interior design. The man took his belt and wrapped it around my waist, pulling it uncomfortably tight and buckling it. Giving it a final tug, he released the belt and the sword weighed down on my hip, nearly taking me with it. "Now!" he bellowed and flung the wimpy monster at me. I shoved it off and it whimpered at my heels, sagging its large warped head and naked tail. "Get out there and do your part for Glynstor, treasure seeker." Treasure seeker? I glanced down at the red and silver sword pulling at my side. "Go on!" It only took one clap on my back from the mountain man to send me out the door like a bullet. Somehow I got through the bolted door and across the high wooden fence before landing on the wet grass outside the man's yard, in the middle of the craziest sight I've ever seen. I lay there paralyzed, staring as dew seeped into my jeans and socks. Vast countryside spread out before me, miles upon miles of vivid, lush green. Beyond that was the most majestic, sweeping landscape of forest-filled hills I've ever seen, like a green ocean. The horizon was topped off by climbing purple mountains, complete with soft white caps. Believe it or not, it was not the majestic scenery that bolted me to my spot. There was something even crazier. Rustic wooden huts with hay for roofs were scattered around me, and in, out, and around these houses were burly men, so thickly dressed in leather, belts, boots, buckles, and beards they made the man I just met look cute. No matter how cool or collected a person is, they cannot be expected to ever see something like that in the flesh. These guys were seriously worked up. They were running around, jabbing, stabbing, hitting, and directing any and all acts of violence at each other. Some with swords and some with just anything that was lying around. I think I saw a pitchfork and a shovel. They were like super serious about it too. Forget avoiding stress. I was literally standing smack dab in the middle of some crazy serious war in an epic medieval fairy tale. So ends chapter 1. Well, what did you guys think of that? So tell me in the comments below what you thought of chapter 1, what you think is going on, and what you think is going to happen next. Thank you so much for watching, and we are Epic Heroes.